Okay, so you guys have been sharing some really interesting stuff with us lately, and one theme keeps popping up. Um,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and it's this idea of finding calm, like truly finding calm in the middle of, well,
Yeah, life.
yeah, exactly.
Like all the
All
chaos.
the chaos and demands and,
Absolute.
everyone's busy and stressed.
Yeah.
So much of what we've been seeing is centered around Oprah Winfrey's take on
Yeah.
this whole idea of training the mind for calm. And it really struck a chord with me, and
Right.
I think with a lot of our listeners too. So we thought, let's do a deep dive into this,
Yeah.
and really pull out those actionable strategies, those things that we can actually start using like today to feel a little bit more grounded, a little more centered.
Exactly. Because I think so often we hear these big ideas like find inner peace. And it's like, well, how do I do that?
Right, right, right. It sounds lovely, but
Exactly.
where's the instruction manual,
It
right?
feels so abstract and overwhelming.
Yeah. So that's what we were doing today. We're getting very concrete. And one of the first things that really jumped out at me from Oprah's perspective was this idea that it really is a training process.
Hmm.
Like you don't just magically wake up one day and you're
Yeah.
like a Zen master.
Totally. And she uses a great analogy, right? She compares it to physical training.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Tell me about that.
Like you wouldn't just expect to run a marathon without putting in the work, hitting the gym day after day, pushing yourself, building those muscles.
Right. It's consistency.
Exactly.
The structure.
And she's saying our minds are the same way. We can't just expect to be mentally strong and resilient if we don't put in the effort to train our minds.
Mm. So it's not passive.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's active. It's a daily practice.
And that takes me to another point that she makes, which I thought was so powerful.
Yeah.
This idea of really being mindful of what we're putting into our minds,
That's huge.
like what we allow in.
It's like we're so careful these days about what we eat.
Right.
The reading labels organic, this gluten-free.
Right. We're very.
Yeah, but we don't often apply that same level of scrutiny to the information we consume, the conversations we have, the people we surround ourselves with.
It's like junk food for the mind in some cases, right?
Totally. And Oprah's saying that we need to be just as discerning about what we feed our minds as we are about what we feed our bodies.
So what are some of the things that she suggests we kind of cut out of our mental diet?
Well, she talks a lot about the dangers of negativity, like dwelling on negative thoughts.
Right.
Constantly complaining, getting sucked into those like doom scrolling spirals online.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
I've definitely been there.
Yeah, and she also talks about limiting exposure to people who are constantly negative or critical or who just drain your energy.
That's so hard, though, sometimes, isn't it?
Oh, it can be, especially if it's family or close friends.
Right, exactly, but
I'm just not saying you have to cut people out of your life entirely, but just being aware of the impact they have on your mental state and maybe setting some boundaries.
yeah, like limiting the time you spend with them or the topics you discuss.
Exactly. It's about protecting your own mental space.
And on the flip side, what are some of the things that Oprah suggests we feed our minds with?
Well, she talks a lot about the power of positive affirmations, like consciously choosing to focus on things you're grateful for, repeating positive statements to yourself.
And is there research to support that? Does that stuff actually work?
There actually is a growing body of research in positive psychology that suggests that practicing gratitude and using affirmations can actually rewire our brains over time to be more optimistic and resilient.
Wow. So it's not just woo-woo.
No, not at all.
It's like actual science.
Yeah, and beyond affirmations, she also emphasizes the importance of surrounding yourself with inspiration.
Okay, how do we do it?
Well, it could be anything from reading books that uplift you to listening to inspiring podcasts like this one,
Oh, thank you.
to spending time in nature, to connecting with people who are positive and supportive.
So it's about being very intentional about curating our mental environment.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're being mindful of our thoughts. We're surrounding ourselves with positive influences.
Right.
What else is part of this training process?
Well, this is where discipline comes in.
Okay.
And Oprah's really clear that discipline is the bedrock of a strong mind.
What does she mean by that?
Well, it's about not just relying on motivation, because motivation comes and goes, Some days you wake up feeling super inspired and other days you just want to stay in bed.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about it.
Right. But discipline is about showing up even when you don't feel like it.
So it's like building a habit.
Exactly like going to the gym even when you're tired or making healthy choices even when you're craving junk food.
So how do we apply that to our minds?
Well, it starts with those small daily choices, like taking a few minutes each morning to meditate or journal, or just sit in silence and set your intentions for the day.
And even something as simple as choosing to respond calmly instead of reacting impulsively in a stressful situation.
Exactly. It's about those little moments of choice where we flex our mental muscles.
I love that analogy.
And over time, those small choices add up to create big changes in our overall mental strength and resilience.
So we're training our minds, we're being disciplined with our thoughts.
Right.
But how do we know where to start? What are the specific areas we need to focus on?
Well, that's where self-awareness comes in.
Okay.
Oprah emphasizes that understanding our own internal landscape is absolutely crucial to unlocking our potential for calm.
So it's like taking inventory of our mental and emotional state.
Yeah, exactly. It's about getting to know ourselves really well, our triggers, our strengths, our weaknesses, the patterns that we fall into.
And how do we actually do that?
Well, one way is to start paying attention to our thoughts and feelings throughout the day,
Okay.
like noticing when we feel stressed or anxious and what triggered those feelings, or recognizing those negative thought patterns that tend to pop up over and over again.
So it's like becoming a detective of our own minds.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say we've done that. We've identified some of our triggers. We've become more aware of those negative thought patterns. What do we do with that information?
Well, that's where we can start to make conscious choices about how we respond,
Okay.
instead of just reacting on autopilot.
So give me an example.
Sure. So let's say your trigger is feeling overwhelmed when you have too much on your plate.
Okay. Relatable.
Once you're aware of that, you can start to put things in place to manage it, like breaking down big tasks into smaller chunks, or learning to say no to things that you don't have the bandwidth for.
So self-awareness helps us become more proactive.
Exactly. It empowers us to take control of our mental and emotional well-being.
And Oprah also talked about how self-awareness can help us break free from the past.
Right.
How does that work?
Well, if we're not aware of the ways that past experiences are influencing our present, we can unconsciously repeat patterns that no longer serve us. But when we shine a light on those patterns, we can start to make different choices.
So we're not doomed to repeat the same mistakes over and over.
Exactly.
Okay, so self-awareness is key. But what about those moments when we're feeling completely overwhelmed?
Yeah.
Like we're about to lose it?
Well, Oprah has a really powerful tool for those moments, and it's the power of the pause.
Okay, tell me more about that.
So it's this idea that instead of reacting impulsively to a situation, we take a moment to just pause.
Just stop.
Yeah, just stop, breathe, and observe what's happening.
I feel like that's so hard to do, though, in the heat of the moment.
Oh, it definitely takes practice, but it's so worth it.
Why is it so important?
Well, because when we react impulsively, we're often driven by our emotions.
Right.
And that can lead to saying or doing things that we later regret.
Oh, yeah, I've been there.
But when we pause, we create space for ourselves to respond more thoughtfully.
So it's about regaining control.
Exactly.
Okay, so how do we actually implement this pause in real life?
Well, one simple technique is to just take 3 deep breaths before responding to something that's upsetting you.
Okay.
Just breathe in deeply, breathe out slowly, and repeat that 3 times. Yeah, it sounds simple, but it can really help to shift your state from reactive to responsive.
And Oprah makes a really interesting distinction between reaction and reflection.
Oh, yeah, tell me about that.
Well, she says that reaction is that immediate impulsive response that's often fueled by emotions, whereas reflection requires conscious effort. It's about stepping back, detaching from those initial feelings, and looking at things from a broader perspective.
So it's like taking a bird's eye view of the situation.
Exactly. And the more we practice that pause, the more we naturally shift towards that state of reflection.
And what's really important to understand is that pausing isn't about suppressing our emotions.
Okay.
It's not about pretending we don't feel them. It's about creating a space to acknowledge them without letting them control us.
So it's like creating a buffer zone.
Exactly.
And she also talks about how this pause is particularly important in conflict.
Oh, absolutely.
The tensions are running high. Our natural instinct is to defend ourselves to prove we're right.
Yeah.
But that often just escalates the situation.
Right. And that's where that pause can be so powerful. It allows us to really listen to the other person's perspective. Not just waiting for our turn to speak, but truly trying to understand where they're coming from.
And that can be so hard to do when we're feeling attacked or defensive.
Oh, totally. But it's a game changer when we can actually achieve it.
And Oprah even suggests that sometimes the strongest response in a conflict is silence. Just holding back from saying anything at all.
And that can be really difficult, especially for people who are naturally talkative or who feel the need to fill every silence.
Yeah.
But there's a real power in choosing silence when it's appropriate. It can prevent us from saying things we don't mean.
Mm.
and it can give us the space to come up with a more thoughtful response later on.
So the pause isn't just about managing conflict.
No, not at all. It's also incredibly helpful for decision making.
Okay. How so?
Well, when we pause before making a decision, we can distinguish between those impulsive urges and our deeper intuition. Sometimes we make decisions based on fear or excitement or just wanting to get something over with.
Oh,
But
yeah.
when we take that pause, we can tap into a deeper wisdom.
So it's about making choices that are aligned with our values and our long-term goals.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're starting to see how all of this ties into this bigger concept of cultivating inner peace.
Right.
And Oprah really challenges that common misconception that peace is something that's dependent on external circumstances.
Oh, totally.
Like we'll be at peace when we have the perfect job or the perfect relationship or when everything in the world is just right.
Yeah, but she's saying that's a recipe for disappointment.
Right, because life is never perfect.
Exactly. There will always be challenges and unexpected events and things that are outside of our control.
So true peace can't be found in trying to control the external world.
No, it has to come from within.
And how do we do that?
Well, Oprah suggests that it's about shifting our focus from what's happening around us to how we're choosing to respond.
Hmm.
She says that chaos is inevitable, but suffering is optional.
What does she mean by that?
Well, she's saying that we can't always control what happens to us, but we can control how we react to it.
So it's about choosing our response.
Exactly.
And she also frames inner peace not as a destination, but as a daily practice.
Right.
It's not something we achieve once and then we're done.
No, it's an ongoing process of making conscious choices moment by moment.
So how do we actually practice inner peace in our daily lives?
Well, it starts with becoming aware of our thoughts and feelings,
Okay.
and then choosing to focus on the positive.
And that doesn't mean ignoring the negative stuff, right?
No, not at all. It's about acknowledging those negative thoughts and feelings, but not letting them consume us.
Okay.
It's about choosing to focus on solutions rather than dwelling on problems.
So it's like a mental shift.
Exactly.
And Oprah also talks about the importance of protecting our inner peace. How do we do that?
Well, she emphasizes the importance of setting boundaries,
Okay.
like being clear about what we will and won't tolerate in our lives.
So that could mean saying no to certain requests or limiting our exposure to certain people or situations.
Exactly.
And she's very clear that this isn't about being selfish or unkind.
No, it's about recognizing our own limits and protecting our own well-being.
So it's an act of self-care.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're cultivating inner peace, we're protecting it.
Right.
What else is Oprah saying about this whole process?
Well, she also highlights the importance of silence.
Silence.
Yeah, like actual quiet time.
That's so rare these days, isn't it?
Oh, it really is.
We're constantly bombarded with noise and stimulation.
Yeah, but Oprah is saying that silence is a source of incredible strength.
How so?
Well, for one thing, it gives us the space to connect with ourselves,
Hmm.
to hear our own inner voice without all the external noise.
So it's like creating a mental sanctuary.
Exactly.
And she also talks about how silence can be a powerful tool in communication.
Oh, right.
How so?
Well, when we're silent, we're actually able to listen more deeply instead of just waiting for our turn to speak. We can truly absorb what the other person is saying and understand their perspective.
And she even suggests that sometimes silence is the strongest response.
Right, especially when we're feeling provoked or angry.
Hmm.
Choosing to remain silent can prevent us from saying something that we'll later regret.
So it's about exercising restraint.
Exactly.
And Oprah also talks about how silence can foster creativity. How does that work?
Well, when our minds are quiet, we're more open to new ideas and inspiration.
Okay.
We're not so caught up in our own thoughts, and we can allow our creativity to flow more freely.
So silence is this multifaceted tool that we can use to enhance our mental and emotional well-being.
Exactly.
And Oprah suggests that the strongest people are often the quietest. Why is that?
Well, she says it's because their silence reflects presence, wisdom, and self-assurance. They don't feel the need to constantly prove themselves or seek external validation.
So their silence is a sign of inner strength. Okay, so we've talked about training our minds, being mindful of our thoughts, cultivating inner peace, embracing silence.
Right.
What else does Oprah say about building mental strength?
Well, she emphasizes that mental strength isn't something we're born with. It's something we develop over time.
Okay.
It's like building physical strength through exercise.
So it requires effort and discipline.
Absolutely.
And where do we start?
Well, she says that it starts with those small daily choices,
Okay.
like choosing to start our day with a positive intention.
And how do we do that?
Well, it could be anything from spending a few minutes meditating to writing down 3 things you're grateful for,
Mm?
or just consciously choosing to focus on the good instead of dwelling on the negative.
So it's about setting the tone for the day.
Exactly.
And she also talks about the importance of discipline,
Right.
which we've already touched on, but I think it's worth emphasizing again.
Oh, absolutely.
Discipline is really the key to building mental toughness.
It's about showing up for ourselves even when we don't feel like it.
And that can be so hard sometimes.
It definitely can be, but it's what separates those who achieve their goals from those who don't.
And Oprah suggests that mental strength isn't about avoiding problems or pretending that everything is always okay.
No.
It's about facing those challenges with clarity, confidence, and resilience.
And that takes practice.
Right. It's about developing those skills
Yeah.
through consistent effort.
And self-awareness plays a huge role here, too.
Okay, how so?
Well, when we're self-aware, we can recognize those negative thought patterns that can sabotage our mental strength, like self-doubt or fear of failure.
Okay.
And once we're aware of them, we can start to challenge them.
So it's about becoming more conscious of our internal dialogue.
Exactly.
And Oprah also talks about emotional control
Right.
as being a key component of mental strength.
And it's not about suppressing our emotions or pretending that we don't feel them.
Okay.
It's about learning to process them in a healthy way.
So it's about choosing how we respond to those emotions.
Exactly.
And she emphasizes that consistency is key.
Right.
It's not about being perfect all the time.
No, it's about showing up for ourselves day after day, even when we make mistakes or slip up.
So it's about progress, not perfection.
Exactly.
And finally, Oprah circles back to this idea of actively choosing inner peace, which she says is something we create and protect from within.
Right.
It's not something that's dependent on external circumstances.
No.
And she reiterates the importance of boundaries,
Right.
of being intentional about who and what we allow into our lives. And she encourages us to focus on the things we can control
Like our thoughts, our actions, our responses.
and to let go of the things we can't.
Like the past, the actions of others, external events.
And she reminds us of the power of our thoughts
Right.
to shape our inner peace. And she emphasizes the importance of forgiveness
Both of ourselves and others.
as a key to letting go of resentment and finding true peace.
And finally, she encourages us to cultivate stillness through practices like meditation or simply spending time in nature.
So it's about creating those pockets of peace in our busy lives.
Exactly.
Wow, this has been such a rich and insightful deep dive.
It really has. Oprah's wisdom is so timeless and relevant.
And she really offers a practical roadmap for cultivating calm and resilience in our lives.
Absolutely.
So for our listeners out there, as you go about your day today, maybe consider focusing on just one thing that resonated with you from our conversation.
Yeah, like maybe it's practicing that pause before reacting to something.
Or setting a boundary with someone who tends to drain your energy.
Or maybe it's simply taking a few minutes to sit in silence and connect with yourself.
Whatever it is, make it small and achievable.
Right.
And just see how it feels.
And remember progress, not perfection.
Exactly. And we'd love to hear from you. Let us
Yeah.
know what you're trying and how it's going.
Yeah, share your experiences with us.
And until next time, keep diving deep.
And stay calm.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.